to really like those rounds. Hope you do too. So, visitors and old-timers, not you. Frequent participators. Unitarian Universalism is not for the faint of heart. And yet, I can't help but think that it is also attractive to the faint-hearted. Unitarian Universalism unlocks the depths of poetry and justice and history and science and myth. Yet these depths often go unexplored. And perhaps you've heard the joke that on Sundays, Unitarian Universalists go to church, someone says nothing for 20 minutes, nobody listens, and then everybody disagrees. Or worse, that Unitarian Universalists don't worship anything on Sundays and then spend the rest of the week practicing it. And I don't like these jokes. Clearly, they are not accurate, and yet there is some rueful truth within them. So, all joking aside, our reputation is that we are a faith of great breadth, but shallow depth. And you can contrast this with, for instance, the reputation of Judaism, which has a very narrow scope, but is as deep as the imagination and production of humanity can go. Our reputation for religious superficiality may or may not be true. Personally, I think it is both accurate and unconsidered at turns. Either way, this reputation does not speak to the possibility that Unitarian Universalism brings to bear. It is this possibility that causes me to observe that Unitarian Universalism is not for the faint-hearted. But it is also the fact that it remains, by and large, only a possibility that I think that we attract the faint-hearted. So here's the nugget. We are a covenantal faith. Covenantal in contrast with the largely creedal faiths of the religious West. We don't ask you to believe. We ask you to promise. And ultimately, Unitarian Universalism promises what you promise. And while we covenant with each other, it is this unspoken, unwritten, reflective covenant wherein Unitarian Universalism achieves its utmost potency and potential for personal and interpersonal growth and satisfaction. Unitarian Universalism promises what you promise. In this way, Unitarian Universalism is a mirror, a spiritual mirror. And actually, that's likely true of all religions. I mean, it's actually true of all perception. But what sets us apart in this sense. What makes Unitarian Universalism the most reflective of these spiritual mirrors, the most revealing, for better or worse, is that Unitarian Universalism is at its essence a dialogue. To wit, if there is a Unitarian Universalist heresy, it is willful ignorance. So I'm reminded of that great Jewish practice of Midrash, wherein pairs of practitioners read and debate a selection of text. Now, we do not have a single text. We source from Revelation, from the wisdom of world religions, and from each other. But if we do not have an exclusive text, we do have this dialogue. So not only a promise for a promise, but a question for a question. And the dialogue that I'm talking about, it could be internal. It may be between you and the world. It may be between you and ideas, or between you and another person. But it is a dialogue. And it is, because of our breadth of sources, it is extremely broad. But contrary to our reputation, it is also deep, because it is as deep as dialogue can take us. We are Midrash. We are modern sophists. It's a powerful way to live. But it is not a free ride. And look, some of the demands of dogma are actually enriching. Dogma forces you into conversation in the name of and in order to justify a kind of conformity. Dogma forces you into dialogue with orthodoxy, but demands ever and always the same conclusion. Now, believe it or not, that can be a rich and good way. It can be a healing way. There are times when it is comforting to believe that there is a conclusion that is always and ever the same. But that is not our way. We of the free faith not only do not demand the same and constant conclusion, we offer none. Now, that being said, it drives me nuts when I hear that we are the religion for whom questions are more important than answers. That strikes me as smug and holier-than-thou snobbery summed up in a bumper sticker parlance. What's more, it's bragging about chasing your tail. I'm not a fan. However, I do think that we can say that we are a religion that values dialogue more than dogma. Indeed, we are a religion of dialogue, of conversation. Because of that, this religion will promise what you promise. If you promise nothing, Unitarian Universalism will yield nothing. But if you promise deep commitment, praxis, investigation, sacrifice, and work, Unitarian Universalism promises peace, deep satisfaction, and resolve. And these are multiplied when we do this together as a community of promise-making, promise-breaking, and promise-remaking people, forgiving people, and forgivable people. We have so much material to work with. We have the breadth of all the world's wisdom and scientific and religious traditions. And we have our practice of dialogue. That can be verbal or symbolic. That can take this radical breadth as deep as you can go. Of course, you can stay at the superficial level if you wish. Many do, and as a minister, that is a little frustrating. I want you all to do as the author and prophet of the vulgar, Henry Miller, suggests. He says, dive deep and don't come up. Of course, I can't claim to be operating at fathoms all the time either. So what is it? Are we lazy? Are we worn out? Does life distract us so? Are we too burned by our experience with religions of the past, which purchased depth at the price of freedom in the currency of dogma, that it is well enough to have religious shelter without doing the work or making the investment to design a religious home? Or is it that we just don't know where to start? Sometimes it seems that because we can use everything, we too often do nothing. Or because we choose not to use only one theme or paradigm, that we too often choose to use nothing. And so rather than diving deep, we tread water. So it must also be said that if we are attractive to the faint of heart, we are also attractive to the intrepid explorers of being, those covenantal activists and champions of justice-making. And if we are attractive to the faint-hearted, to those worn thin by dogma, to those wounded by the religious misunderstanding of others, to those drained by empty rituals and out of touch with traditions, to those who want in their weariness nothing more than to rest and recover in the company of the like-minded, then I say all the better. Let us be their sanctuary. May you find shelter and healing here. May you hear the sweetness of our promises and be inspired by the evolution that occurs when we make promises, break promises, forgive, and remake promises. For the fundamental promise, the healing power of promise, is the promise of presence. But know this: we are no mere refuge. We are a power plant. And I say unto you, plug in. As you will soon hear in the congregational meeting later this afternoon, West Valley Unitarian Universalist Church is moving into a new phase. Ona spoke to it a little bit earlier. It's a phase that is bursting with opportunities to plug in. Plug into this power plant. question of the month, the liturgical theme of the month is, what do we worship? And the sermon title was Inevitable Reverence. So the question of the moment may be, what do either of these have to do with what I've been going on about for the past few moments? The answer to that I propose is the same answer that I would propose to the question in the minds of those of you who have been plugged into West Valley and are fried rather than empowered. What do we worship? What is inevitable reverence? How do I keep from getting fried? How do I dive deep? So I propose that these answers are about intention and focus. Set your intention and do not become distracted. So of course the next question is, what is our intention? What shall frame and order our time together? What is our covenant? What is our center? May we call it holiness. Holiness. It's vague enough to set our course without predetermining an overly specific destination. The holy. Let us be holy. What does that mean? Here I turn to wiser minds than mine. I'm going to quote my friend, Rabbi Neil Blumoff, extensively. I'm not worried about losing any of you to his congregation because he's in Austin. So that's all. Rabbi Blumoff writes, "To be holy means to be dedicated and to involve ourselves personally in specific matters. Holiness is vulnerability and living specifically, caring about the outcome. What we pay attention to matters, and the investments we make pay dividends in the currency of the thing itself. When we attach ourselves to holiness, we cultivate qualities of honesty and trust. We are not living in competition. Our holiness does not have to be sanctimonious, holier than yours. Rather, to be holy means to invest ourselves in living deliberately and with purpose. What do we care about when the rubber meets the road? Separate and apart from our latest acquisitions or our current desires, what brings us meaning and satisfaction, and fills us up with force and vigor, charging our soul with an electric spirit that conducts positive energy and transmits it in return? Holiness is a practice. Let us offer ourselves and others generosity and patience as we strive to be better in our thoughts, feelings, and actions. Let us not wait for a trying time to cast about for meaning. Let us take every moment to live fully and with interest, with our pursuit of holiness bringing us to a place of more involvement and, by extension, more happiness." End quote. So humans worship like humans breathe. It's what we do. We may not worship what we call a god or gods. We may not literally bow and pray and sacrifice to that which we worship. But we will do so in some manner, and probably more literally than you think. If you do not intend your worship, you may find yourself worshiping entities and events that do not bring you satisfaction, peace, and resolve, but rather their opposites, or something worthless. And considering that worship, the word, is derived from the Old English worthscape, which means to give worth to, worshiping the worthless is linguistic heresy at the least. Likewise, humans will discover or create a state of reverence because that is part of our psychological and biological makeup. It is how we are, how we find meaning and connection in this world. We are inevitably reverent. And I'd suggest that it's better to be so with intention rather than leave it to happenstance or habit or dogma, whether that dogma be political, scientific, or religious. Find that which brings you meaning and satisfaction and fills you up with force and vigor, charging your soul with an electric spirit that conducts positive energy and transmits it in return. And that is here. That will be revealed to you here. If you bring it with you. The implication here is in perfect poetry with our first principle, which recognizes the inherent worth of everyone. You are inherently dignified, imbued with worth inherently. The holy is already within you. It is a gift that you already have, but is best unwrapped here because here it is multiplied, shared, and empowered. So the magic is that by you being here, by your presence in covenant, by your engagement in this intentional dialogue, that electric spirit may be identified, recognized, conducted, and developed. That is your promise and your question. That is your unwritten covenant with Unitarian Universalism. What you promise, you will be promised. Dive deep. You will now join me singing hymn number 123, Spirit of Life. You may rise as you are willing and able.
Spirit of life, Set me free. Spirit of love, come to me, come to me.
So in the spirit of receiving what we bring, maybe Eric's birthday, but he's given us a gift of a little bit more time today. We are going to start our congregational meeting at 12:15 so that we can celebrate Eric's birthday properly. So thank you for that quarter of an hour.
And the cake.
And the cake. Sweetness for sweetness. So if you'll join me as I extinguish the chalice in the unison reading of our mission statement printed at the bottom of your order of service. This church
Provides a safe place to celebrate diversity, draw inspiration for our lives, foster social and environmental justice, and compassionately support each other in our spiritual searches.
dive deep, plug in, battery starts at 12:15.